Hello. Yes. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us here for this very interesting session on biofuel development in emerging markets. My name is Bharadwaj Kummamuru. I'm the Executive Director for the World Bioenergy Association. And very briefly, the World Bioenergy Association, we are an industry association based in Stockholm. And our mission is to promote the sustainable development of biofuels and bioenergy technologies around the world. We have members that include pellet producers, ethanol manufacturers, biogas companies, equipment manufacturers, and so on. So it's a wide, broad range of members, mainly companies and associations in our network. And in terms of activities that we do, the WBA, we are a knowledge hub on the technology development for bioenergy. We are a networking platform, and we also work a lot with international advocacy for pushing bioenergy technologies and solutions. And very briefly about myself, 22 years back, or 23 years back, I did my first ever research project, and that was on GRFA-based biodiesel. And since then, my sort of affiliation or affair with biofuels has been ongoing. Since that project, I worked a lot on research on technology, mainly syngas development, gasification, reforming technologies, and fisher crops and so on, before I moved to environmental assessments, life cycle analysis of various bioenergy pathways, mainly in India and in Indonesia, before I moved to advocacy work at the WBA, which I've been working for the past 10 years or so. And I'm very honored to be the moderator for this session. Thank you to Professor Glaucia and the organizing committee for the invitation. And just to put things into context, currently the global development, the global production of biofuels is about 160 billion liters, which is about 4% of the whole transport demand. And when you look at the future, we've seen some of the projections from the International Energy Agency. And they say that we need to at least triple the amount of biofuels that we have in the system in the next 5 to 7 years. And the major role should be played by the emerging markets or the emerging economies, especially in the global south. And the thing is, these emerging markets, they do share a lot of challenges. For example, most of them are, say, fossil fuel importers. They do depend a lot on imported oil. They have a significant population growth, which means a lot more energy demand. And they also have all these decarbonization targets towards net zero or blending mandates and so on. And biofuels offer a lot of opportunities in not just reducing emissions, but also creating a lot of jobs and providing economic development in these regions. At the same time, they'd also face a lot of challenges, the development of biofuels in these regions, whether it's in terms of finance, whether it's technology, policy, criticism from NGOs, communication, awareness, and so on. So there's a lot of challenges as well. So in this session, in the next 90 minutes or so, we'll be hearing from an expert group of speakers from around the world who will mainly talk about what's happening in various markets in terms of development of biofuels, what are the main barriers, what are the challenges in not just scaling up, but also scaling up at pace that is needed. And at the same time, what can we do in terms of cooperation? And that's what personally I'm looking for, is how can we have more South-South cooperation in helping overcome these barriers, but also achieve the targets for decarbonization in the transport sector. So with that, I'll stop, and I'll give the floor to Professor Glaucia, the professor from University of Sao Paulo, and she's going to share the latest report on biofuels in emerging markets in America, Africa, and Asia. The floor is yours.
Yes, good morning. Thank you all for accepting our invitation to join us in this important discussion on the potential, the challenges, and the strategies for decarbonization of the global south, of emerging markets. So I'm Glaucia Souza. I'm a professor at the University of São Paulo. I am a coordinator of the State of São Paulo Foundation research program on bioenergy, BioN, and I am also task 39 co-leader. Task 39 works on biofuels for decarbonization of transportation. And the study that I'm going to present today was conducted under the edges of IEA Bioenergy Task 39. So we started by mapping all policies in the Global South, looking at blending mandates, looking at maturity of these policies, and we mapped biofuels implementation according to biofuels being fully implemented, where we have mandates partially implemented, or where we have some positive environment for biofuels being in place, but not quite yet the policy in effect. And the question we put was, how can these countries contribute to the challenge of displacing, of substituting, avoiding 800 million tons of emission by 2030, which was what IEA was proposing for the transport sector. We looked at land availability. We started looking in Latin America because biofuels are fully implemented there. And when we look at Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, and Guatemala, which contribute to 30% of the global biofuels production, we see that there is quite a lot of land available, and that for biofuels production that jointly are every year decreasing around 60 million tons of CO2 emissions, very little land is used. I want you to look at the very thin slice in blue and in green on each of these land areas. That is the slice that's been used to produce 30% of the global biofuels. So there is a lot of land available, especially pasture land, that could be used for expansion of bioenergy in these countries. If we want to duplicate biofuels production in these 4 countries, let's say get to 120 million tons of CO2 avoided, we calculated the amount of land needed, and it's around 5% of pasture land. So it's not a lot of land to double production. And if these countries had a policy such as we have with the Renewable Bio that rewards producers that are certified and shown to be reducing emissions with their biofuels, and if these carbon credits were sold at $10 a ton, these countries could be generating an additional $1.2 billion revenue every year. So it's an opportunity for decarbonization and also for growth, creating jobs, and with several benefits for the environment, including when you transition from pasture into cropland, into energy croplands, in 2 to 3 years, you're already accumulating carbon in the soil. So the payback time for the transition is not long. So we looked at several pathways already established, using cultures that these countries already know how to cultivate, using their yields. And we looked at ethanol production from corn and sugarcane, which in parallel is producing multiple other products, not only ethanol. We also looked at biodiesel from soy and from palm. And then we asked, can this model be adapted, replicated in other countries? And we chose countries that have large territories, that they have a growing population, and that they increasingly use more energy. And if they continue growing as they are, they would be contributing with an increase of 117% of additional CO2 emissions. So we looked at South Africa, Ethiopia, China, India, Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia. Our conclusions, we looked at oil, palm, rapeseed, soybean in these countries, corn and sugarcane, also looked at their own production of fossil fuels, compared them, did a life cycle analysis, a techno-economic analysis, a market analysis, and a policy analysis. And our conclusion is that biofuels can reduce significantly emissions for these countries, that very little land is needed for moderate scenarios of biofuels production in these countries, and that they could together be contributing around 300 to 400 million tons of avoided emissions. So if you remember in the beginning of my talk, I said the goal is 800. With less than a dozen countries, we are close to half of that. So it's possible to produce biofuels competitively. We calculated a decrease in the final price of the biofuel at the pump in these countries, and it's at least 10% cheaper if we do this transition. So an additional 45 billion liters of biodiesel and 64 billion liters of ethanol could be produced. Some of these countries may be importers of biofuels in the beginning, but the amount of land needed to produce these biofuels there is not a lot. There's enough pasture for this expansion. So this is the report. You can download the report at the IEA Bioenergy Task 39 site. There's also a fact sheet there. And I want to finish just by showing you this group also produced together with several different countries that I am listing there, a policy brief for the G20 with several recommendations for policies. And I have here one of the co-authors. Aida was on the list of contributors to this, as many others that are listed there. So this is also public, and this is what I had to say for now.
Perfect. Thank you, Professor Glaucia. I mean, it's a very good scene-setting presentation which is very relevant for the section or the session that we are looking forward to. We quickly move on to the first speaker, and that's Mrs. Rocio Diaz-Chaves from the Imperial College, UK in London, who's going to talk about biofuel production in emerging markets, renewal of the sector in the global south. So I very much look forward to your intervention.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I want to thank the organizer committee for inviting me. I've been in BBES since the first edition, and I was also a collaborator with the project from Scope that Glaucia Souza also organized. So I'm very pleased to be here. So I normally present in the sustainability sessions. So this is going to be on something that it is happening in the global south. So that's the question on biofuels productions in emerging markets. Is it really a renewal of the sector in the global south, or maybe it's also part of it also in the global north? So I know that we have been listening to the different presentations here about the bioeconomy and how, if we take a look at this from the bioeconomy strategy from Finland, you can see that as a society we have been moving from a natural economy with several, with the use of natural resources to a fossil economy, and then we are trying to move into a bioeconomy where we are expecting that GDP and well-being will be even higher. And this connects different sectors, from food security to health and well-being, bio-based industry development, and sustainable energy. And that sustainable energy can be not just transportation, that can be also for industry, cooking, and for other systems. You have heard also about these issues about the access to electricity. And there are still more than 700 million people without access to electricity. You can see it from particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, but also cooking. Still over 2.5 billion people without access to clean cooking. So this is still alarming, considering that SDGs are supposed to be fulfilled by 2030. And we know, because there have been several reports, that we are not going to achieve them. So Glaucia just presented it about the mandates that are for globally about biofuel. But we also have to understand that several of them, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, were not implemented because of the reduction of emissions, but for energy security. So that's a very different aspect. And also considering the amount of emissions that the whole continent has, it's very limited. And also bioeconomy with different policies, plans, or strategies around the world. But I would like to bring your attention to also the case of sub-Saharan Africa, where several countries are starting also to implement them. South Africa is under the review of their own bioeconomy strategy. And I was also the co-coordinator of the East African bioeconomy strategy that covers nine countries in the region. So for Africa, there is also an interesting part for these emerging markets. There is a common market that it includes almost half of the continent. So that means that the commercialization of this type of biofuels could have better approach in the region, rather than thinking that they could be exported to Europe, for example. So you can see that it covers 26 countries, so it's almost half of Africa. And just doing some review about bioethanol production, you can see that the prices were moving from a little bit less than $1 to a little bit more than $1 per liter of gasoline equivalent. And if you see it from 2005 to 2015, the production increased from 50 billion to 130 billion. So just as a reminder that in 2008, we have the review of the Renewable Energy Directive in Europe. So that was one of the drivers for the increasing production of bioethanol. And, but as I mentioned before, that is also not just for transport. It is also, for example, for cooking. And this organization based in Kenya, but working across sub-Saharan Africa, indicated some interesting points about how the natural path for commercial viability, in this case for cooking stoves, should be moving from grants, loans, and equity, and later to patient capital, and then to commercial capital. This is important because it does not apply only to cooking stoves, it also applies for financing for example, the biofuels for bioenergy and bioeconomy in the global south. So, as I mentioned before, this African regional bioeconomy strategy, what we had was the vision of all the countries in the region for this physical, chemical, and biotechnological processing in four different sectors that they decided these were the sectors they wanted to focus on, from food production and sustainable agriculture to health and well-being, bio-based industrial development, and sustainable energy. And sustainable energy included also biomass, solid biomass, so for example, briquettes and pellets as alternative to charcoal and firewood, but also the production of biogas from organic waste that could be also utilized for industrial uses and advanced biofuels. So just a quick exercise, of course, that we did was about the availability of land. And you can see here that particularly Kenya and Tanzania are the ones that have larger land area and agricultural area. But in the case of Tanzania, the forestry area, it's larger than the rest of the countries. And this is important for them to try to preserve it without opening any more agricultural land, for example, for biofuel production. So looking at some of the availability feedstock resources that they had there, you can see that only considering crop residues from different productions, you can see the theoretical availability is still quite high, But when you look at the sustainability availability, that's around 30%. So you can leave something on the ground and they already have some other uses. You still have some sufficient material to really produce some kind of biofuels. But what was considered over there in terms of the drivers was to move the supply chains that export most of their resources as raw material. More than 30% of the GDP in sub-Saharan Africa is it's for export of raw material. They want to add some value addition. Bio-waste, agricultural residues, municipal waste, forestry residues. So even if they are kind of simple supply chains, they want to move them into some aggregated value. This is the case of croton, that it is a tree that grows from all East Africa down to South Africa, and that they can produce biodiesel, bio-oil, feed for animals, and biofertilizers. And of course, the sugarcane bagasse that can be used for briquettes, for example, for tea and other food processing industry there. But there are other uses. As I mentioned, there is, for example, production of biofuel from aquatic plants in Lake Victoria that sort out some of the environmental problems, producing ethanol for cooking, biogas, not just for domestic use, but also for cogeneration, and even transport and aviation. So South Africa, Ethiopia, and Kenya are already producing some SAF, and their Kenya Airlines, for example, is already using it. But if we are talking about these emerging markets, we cannot move away from what sustainability should be included. So not just the traditional 3 pillars, but also governance. And this report was produced from the World Bioeconomy Forum. This is about financing a sustainable global bioeconomy. So this was produced thinking about 3 evolving bioeconomy segments. So the nature-intensive bioeconomy, which is the one that we run mostly now, with primary production and utilization of resources, such as agriculture, forestry, and fisheries. Advanced bioeconomy that builds up on the nature-intensive bioeconomy, but with higher technological advances and more knowledge, and high-tech biotechnology or bioeconomy that uses really cutting-edge intersections. So just want to draw your attention to this about 2 points. Location and logistics and policy and regulation. These are very important for financing the bioeconomy because we know that the biomass is contextual. So these things have to be considered for these emerging markets. And also in terms of financial challenges for the bioeconomy, also considering the feedstock availability, logistics and infrastructure, biodiversity impact, but mostly equity and inclusion. I'm nearly finishing, Chair. We had 2 projects just finishing, well, one of them, it finished this year, Bike, where we were looking also at this. And this does not apply only to the Global South. It is also applying in Europe. Biofuels production in alternative land. So it was considering marginal, degraded, unused or abandoned land, and their possibilities of use. So we found a large amount of this land in Europe that could be used for these emerging markets with certain types of crops that can be adapted to this kind of land, also considering the agrosystems. And this other project, Gold, it is still going on. This is on growing energy crops on contaminated land for biofuels and soil remediation. This, we also found significant amount of land in Europe where certain types of crops can also be grown, and they can have also a role in the new directive on, in the new policy on landscape restoration. So just to finalize, I think we cannot move from thinking strategically on how to go for this renewable sector in emerging economies. We are still working in silos. We really need to bring policies and the systems together so that we can work on these emerging markets in a better way. And particularly for the Global South, the idea of just transition has to still be there. We cannot really go back to the mistakes we had before with certain crops. Sorry, Chair, about jatropha, or about castor oil, we really need to have memory of what happened after the review of the Renewable Energy Directive in 2008, particularly in the global South, to avoid the mistakes in these emerging markets. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for sharing the perspectives from Sub-Saharan Africa. And I think you touched upon very important topics, whether it's bioeconomy, and that in most of the cases, that the main driver sometimes is energy access and energy security, rather than just avoiding emissions. But that's very clear. We do have, we'll try to take one question if there's any, one quick question from the audience. No? I do have one question though. There's a very we've talked about local markets and building up the supply chains to meet the demands of the local markets in these different countries. But there's a very interesting dynamic in the last few years where you've got these very big oil majors who are investing in land and in production of novel feedstock, novel crops for producing oilseeds and then exporting that to the EU. How do you see that dynamic? How do you see that impacting do you see that as a positive driver for local development, which can then lead to helping meet the demands? What's your impression on that?
Thank you. The problem is, again, that if the GDP for particularly Sub-Saharan Africa is just sending raw material to other parts of the world, it's not just Europe. It's mainly Europe, but not just. So the problem would be that if there is not value added, it is just a persistent problem that it will not change. But indeed, there have been some positive cases where they have managed to add that value to improve the local conditions and to satisfy also their energy needs. Because I would say that is part of the just transition, that they can really use the resources for them. And I'm pretty sure that there are going to be some other examples here from also Latin America, Asia, and Africa, where we have seen that. I just wanted to focus on this case in East Africa because of this new bioeconomy strategy over there. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We're going to travel a lot in this next few presentations to various different countries. So next, I'm very pleased to invite Aida Lorenzo, who's from the Guatemalan Renewable Fuels Association, to share perspectives from Central America in terms of implementation of ethanol blending program. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation, all the organizers. Today I'm going to give you a presentation about Central America. Thank you to taking into account Central America. We are a small region, and it's really important to listen all the experience that you have, all that we have to learn from you. And could you please put my presentation? And maybe for an introduction, in Central America, I'm from Guatemala. I live in Guatemala. When you talk about bioenergy, they really do not understand the importance of bioenergy still. So we have to work a lot. We have a lot of experience also. But maybe our government do not think about the importance of bioenergy in our energy matrix. I don't know if my presentation is ready. Thank you. So as all you all know about, there are more than 60 countries around the world are using ethanol. They have a mandate for blending programs, and you have different colors in the map. Basically, America, it's the region that produce and use more ethanol around the world. And the first thing that idea that comes to my mind is why the green countries can't have the blending programs and why the Central America region cannot. This is really weird because right now we also have the same questions that you have 40 years ago. We have the same myth that you had 4 years ago in Central America. But I'm going to make a zoom in the Central American region. Just for a context, I want to tell you that basically we have more than 50 million inhabitants. Also, we have 10 million vehicles, so you can figure out how the region is. The region imports 100% of its fossil fuels. That represents more than $10,000 million. Basically, we import from the United States, so we have zero energy security. The region has almost the same fuel quality standards, and we gather in the RTC, Reglamento Técnico Centroamericano. And for more information, also, we are a small region, but we have different public policies and different fuel markets. For example, the free fuel markets in our region is Guatemala, also El Salvador, and Nicaragua. That means that the government does not establish the prices in our fuels. But we also have regulated markets like Honduras, Costa Rica, and Panama. And today I'm going to focus on these in three countries, Guatemala, Panama, and Costa Rica, because we are the 3 countries that are planning to have a blending program very soon. And a really important thing is that we only have 3 oil importers. That means that only 3 companies import the gasoline from all of our countries. We have also 16 distilleries. We produce from molasses, from sugarcane, and 100% of our pure ethanol is exported basically to European Union and US. Like Professor Orta always says, Guatemala case and Central American case is a paradox because we import 100% of our fossil fuels and we exported 100% of our green fuels. That's nonsense. So we are going now to Costa Rica. Basically, they already have 3 pilot plants, and they have 1.8 million cars. And they basically Recope, it's the governmental institution that import all the gasoline in the country. They are still using MTBE, like octane enhancer, and they have 21 million gallons ethanol production capacity per year. They are trying to start also a blending program, ethanol blending program, in 2025. For me, Costa Rica has all. They have, they're also selling itself like a green country. The government can't start import gasoline with less octane number and then add ethanol. And the main key actors are basically the environmental ministry, Recope, and ARECEP, and we really hope that they can start really, really soon. Then we go to Panama. That's a real case also. They already have a blending program in 2013. Basically, they use ethanol blending for 2 years, but when the government changed, basically, they derogate this, they discard this program. It's really sad. And they have limited ethanol capacity, but they are trying to produce more. Basically, the main actor is the National Secretary of Energy, and they are planning also to start next year, 2025. And then let's move on to Guatemala, my country. We have 5 distilleries. We have installed capacity enough to start a blending program. We use molasses. We export 70% of our sugar. We also export molasses. So we have a huge capacity of production and increasing our production, not increasing our area crops. And also an important thing is that we export 100% of our fuel production, and all of our production is certified on sustainability. So that's really sad for us because we produce a green fuel, sustainable biofuels, and we exported to European Union to clean their air. So that's really sad for us. At least the ethanol industry It creates 29,000 direct and indirect jobs. Also, that's like the sad news, we have a law since 1985. That means 39 years ago we have this law. But it really took a long time to our government to regulate this law. Finally, last year, our government regulated this law, and it says you have to start a blending program on January 25. But we have a new government that started this year, and they say, no, let's think about it, and then we have to start it on January 26. So we have hope right now, but the government has to give the right signals that so we can start on January 26. Another important thing is that the ethanol blending program, it's prioritized in our NDC. We can see like a GHG emission action and to accomplish our environmental commitments. And to finish the opportunities and challenges that we have, basically, the region, we have enough installed capacity. We have sugar production, and we can have more ethanol production. We can save at least foreign currency at least $1,000 million. We can reduce GHG emissions in the transport sector, and we can also can mitigate the climate change for the transport sector, and we can improve our fuel and our air quality. And the challenges, I think, are the biggest ones. I think the first one is the political will. Every time when I came to Brazil, I just get amazed because I really see that you have the same vision, all the sectors, right? Not only the private sector, the public sector, the academia, you're working together with different ministries, so that is not happening in our region. That's really, really sad. So I think political will, because it's everything, because basically we have the need to stop these fuel imports, and we can produce it, so it's a huge challenge. I think the other one is the oil region oil lobby that we have with these three companies. They have a lot of power in our region. And I think it's really necessary to prioritize a biofuel blending program as a decarbonization strategy. That is really important. And we have to create long-term public policies that is really important for all the actors. For example, right now in Guatemala, we're waiting that the government establish the ideas or what are the next steps. For example, the importers, they have to install or construct different tanks for ethanol. And also we have to, for example, the producer, they are waiting if they are going to export the local production or they are going to give it to the local market, right? And so I think we are really close, but I hope on the next BBES conference I can announce you that at least one country is started with a blending program. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sort of sharing the light on the region, because that's something that it doesn't happen often. Because, for example, when you hear of Costa Rica, the first thing that comes to mind is 100% electricity renewable from hydro. That's the first success story that you keep hearing. But it's good to see that there's a lot of opportunities. I wasn't aware of the existing capacities, and that 100% comes in and 100% goes out. So it's a challenge. Any one question possibly? Yes. Here.
Questions, please. Okay.
Yeah.
Rainer,
You
visiting. We are. Yes.
then okay. Ryan. Yeah, one, and then we can take Ryan. Okay.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for this nice presentation, Rainer Janssen from WIP. It is indeed a little frustrating, no? I remember that we had a workshop on an EU project 15 years ago in Costa Rica, and Rocio was there as well, you know. So all what you presented was clear by that time, you know. You have the sugar industry, you can use the molasses, you can easily blend E10. And so the question I had prepared was, what is blocking you? I think you have nicely answered with the first two bullets, so I will revise my question. What do you think, like, what are you doing? And how would you think that the international community, like UNIDO and other players, can really take you the last step towards convincing your policymakers and overcoming the lobby work? You know, what needs to be done? Can we help? Yeah.
That's a very interesting question. We really need help. Basically, right now, the U.S. Grains Council is helping us. Also, the Brazilian government is helping us. Because when you speak, the other one speak, that is more well received, right? I think we need more help. We have, in Guatemala, we have already had 2 pilot plants. I think we don't need more pilot plants. I think we need to show what the benefits are for the country. I have been working for 20 years to promote this in my country. I'm really frustrated sometimes, right? But I have to keep going, and I think every time when you can contact our countries, like these events, we can do more events in our country so they can listen that this is a really good option for our country. So especially because we import 100% of our fuels. That's nonsense, and we are doing that. So any help that you can give to the region, it's really welcome.
It is really, really good to hear from you and Rocio talk about the countries that are absolutely in conditions to implement biofuels program with a lot of the advantages for the people, for the nature, for everyone. And we are facing still barriers, as a paradox, as I used to say. In this direction, maybe it's interesting for us, all of us in this event, to consider that it's lack of information in many cases, and misinformation is worst. Okay, when the people are convinced that, in case of Costa Rica, let's to opt for electrification, full electrification, they have it in the hands, available immediately, the use of biofuels, sustainable biofuels. So I think that is still to solve these questions, and please go ahead, both you. 20 years is not enough. We need, yes.
Don't tell me that, please.
Yes, no, because we are. I do believe that we are close to the next year. We have a good minister. I know that's not the best one, but this minister is different from the previous one. I'm following these in the last 2 decades, as you know, and I think that is an absurd, a country that are producing, exporting very good ethanol, certified ethanol, with high productivity and so on, but they're not using. Why? No. So let's to go together supporting this transformation there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Horta.
Thank you so much for the valuable comment. And the next speaker is Jossy Thomas from UNIDO, and he's going to talk about the contribution of the sugar sector in achieving a very important aspect of energy access in Africa.
Good morning. I'm representing UNIDO. The UNIDO is a United Nations specialized agency promoting industrialization, sustainable and inclusive industrialization in developing countries. And I belong to the Just Energy Transition Unit, where we try to promote, help these countries to achieve SDG 7, that is the universal access to energy. And the previous presentation of Dr. Rocio showed you how much gap in the access to both electricity as well as the clean cooking in developing countries. And therefore, we are actually promoting a global program, global impact program for clean cooking in this for the developing countries, and also in that process we established a council on ethanol clean cooking, which will promote the use of sugarcane-based ethanol in African countries and Asia in order to achieve or minimize this energy poverty in the cooking sector. So this Council on Ethanol Cooking was launched during COP27 in Egypt, and there are all 22 member countries, mostly from sub-Saharan Africa, are members, and our goal is to support these member countries to achieve the clean cooking targets by 2030. So when we are talking about, to that purpose we undertook country studies on the sugar sector in 6 African countries to see what is the potential for this to meet the targets of these countries. So when you look at these countries, we have to understand that the electricity access in these 6 countries is highest is in Kenya, is about 75% people have access to electricity, whereas only 25% of people have access in Madagascar, and the rest of the countries lies in between. Similarly, in clean cooking area, you see the Ivory Coast has the access to clean cooking about 32% of people. That's the highest in these 6 countries. And Madagascar, only 1% of the people have access to any form of clean cooking technologies and fuels. So so my presentation today is a synthesis of these 6 reports, 6 country studies, and which will give us an idea of what are the potential available. And the methodology we used is a preliminary, first of all, did a preliminary data collection and desk study, and then we sent out a questionnaire to all the key stakeholders in each of these countries. And after analyzing and calculations, we come up with the reports for individual countries, and this is a synthesis of that 6 report. And I want to warn you, it is not a comparative study, it is just assessment of individual countries. So we specifically look at the sugarcane cultivation, sugar production statistics, and what is the sugar demand and supply and the gap in each of these countries, and also what implications are there on the energy and environment performance of the processes, and also requirement of investment in order to achieve the full potential of the sugar industry. In terms of sugar production, we see that African countries in general has a very favorable climate for the sugar sector, sugar cultivation, and the process of cultivation depend on varies with various countries. For example, in Kenya, 90% of the cultivation is done by small-scale farmers, and only 10% is cultivation done by the factories. Whereas on Ivory Coast, only 10% of the farmers are organized in the small-scale sector. So there are, and when you look at the, the first graph is about the area of, in terms of hectares, each of the country under sugar cultivation, and also you will see similarly respective figures on the production of sugar in these countries. One of the important observation in this study is that out of the 6 countries, 5 countries are producing less sugar than their demand. So there is a big gap in their sugar production. And only in Mozambique, they have a little bit of surplus production for sugar. So there is an immense potential to bridge that gap, and in that process there could be big opportunities in terms of meeting the electricity demand and also clean cooking fuel, as well as incorporating possibility to incorporate the circular economy principle to develop a bioeconomy in those countries. So sugar industry, basically you all are hearing from last 2 days on the various ways where sugar sector can support, in addition to producing sugar, towards meeting the demands in the energy sector in terms of electricity and ethanol, as well as biogas possibilities. So this in this slide we see that if these countries can utilize their current existing production capacity fully, they have a lot of possibilities to have additional revenue from the sale of electricity to the grid. And in this slide, we see that the possibilities of bioethanol production and the contribution to the revenue in terms of avoiding the importation of fossil fuel for the transport sector, as well as supporting the clean cooking sector. We also look at the requirement for the ethanol requirement for blending of at least E5, that 5% blending will save how much foreign exchange for each of these countries. And this is the details of the biogas production possibilities from Vinas, and this is can support the process heat requirement in the factories, as well as possibly community-based biogas for cooking. So this slide again explain how much possibilities are there and foreign exchange can be saved in each of these countries by replacing benzene by blending E5 in those countries. At the same time, all this process is contributing to the greenhouse gas emission, carbon reduction in various stages of the production process through bioethanol, clean cooking, electricity generation, and blending. Altogether can support the NDC commitment of all these countries. So, as I mentioned before, most of these countries are, except for Mozambique, all countries are running their sugar sector under about average of 60% capacity. So, and they are having a huge gap in the demand and supply of sugar. So this is an opportunity for investment, and these are some of the rough estimates of each of these country, investment required for upgrading and putting up new plants in those countries, and which can meet most of their need for clean cooking and some additional need for blending by ethanol. With this, in conclusion, there are tremendous potential for African countries to get into this bandwagon of ethanol, sugar industry, and the associated product development, and which can meet most of their SDG goals and NDC commitment. So these are some of the SDG goals can be met, and in addition, several of the social impacts in the reduction by giving the clean cooking opportunities. There are several women and children dying every year because of the indoor air pollution, and then most of the women and young girls are engaged in collecting firewood for cooking. So these all can be avoided, and they can be, gender empowerment can be brought in by this development of sugar sector in these countries. I am overshooting time very much, so I am all these challenges. I think the slides will be available in the website, and then you can go through it. So these are some of the last recommendations or sectoral priorities for the sugar sector. In this country especially, and also in African countries in general, there is a need to focus on capacity increase to meet self-sufficiency in sugar production, and it's also given opportunity to develop job creation through developing outgrower schemes and encouraging small farmers to engage in sugar cultivation, and also encouraging climate smart agricultural practices, as well as upgrading of technologies, because many of the sugar industries in Africa are basically producing sugar and using a small percentage of their bagasse for their electricity and heat needs. So there is a lot of waste happening, and this can be properly utilized for achieving all these objectives. So with this, I think I will conclude for time being now and give the opportunity to other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing perspectives from those different countries. I mean, it's one thing to have the potential, one thing to look at. I mean, it's quite obvious in terms of the benefits that they have, but the challenge, and what we saw in Central America as well, is that having policies is just one step. The implementation is the bigger challenge in many cases. Even in India, for example, when you say GRFA, that was the time when one of the national biofuels policy was coming up, and GRFA was the hot topic, and that's why we picked that up. But nothing happened for 15 years or so. We had E5, it stayed, I think, 1% or so, and then it suddenly switched. And there's a lot of drivers that can be used, levers that can be used to drive the implementation. But one quick question, if there's any. Yes.
Well, congratulations, Jossy, for your presentation. I have two questions related to your presentation. Are these sugarcane companies making money? And second, is there interest in private companies to invest in the sugarcane sector in Africa?
Yes, as you saw in the presentation, there is a huge gap in the demand and supply. So most of these countries are importing sugar. For example, you might have seen Nigeria is every year importing almost $1 billion worth of sugar to that country. So there is a possibility, immense potential to for the sugar sector to grow. Now, the Nigerian government has a strategy for the last 15 years to meet, to become self-sufficient. But during these 15 years, nothing much has improved in terms of investment in sugar sectors. So there are some real barriers in these countries to achieve the full potential. But currently there are many sugar industries operating, and they are making profit because of the demand in these countries. But actually, for countries like Tanzania, there are new investments coming, and they are also looking at modernizing the existing plants, and also looking at producing ethanol and other byproducts. So there is an increased interest, and is happening. But of course, there is also the financing barriers are very high. So I personally know many private investors, developers want to or trying to invest in sugar sector over many years, and they are not able to find financing at affordable rates. So this is a major barrier or many of these private investors are facing.
Thank you. Thanks for that. And next we move on to South Africa. Pleased to invite Mr. Unity Chipfupa from UNISA, South Africa, to talk about bioenergy development pathways in smallholder agri-sector from a South African perspective. So please.
Thank you so much for the invitation. And yeah, this is our first Be Best. conference, and we hope we are going to continue to come. I want to present about a project that we are doing. I want to present about a project that we are doing, an initiative that we are doing at the University of South Africa. You know, what's interesting about the presentation that are being presented here is that when I see at the maps that are being presented about South Africa, it's actually put in such a way that it looks like things are working well there in as far as the bioenergy sector is concerned. However, I want to present a different picture because we have a two-pronged sector. We have got the commercial sector, where we see most of what is being presented here is actually happening in South Africa. But then we have got another sector which is actually being left behind in as far as the bioenergy industry is concerned. And our initiative wants to involve that part of South Africa which is actually being left behind. And it is because when we look at the current policies and existing frameworks that are there, we do have challenges. And some of those challenges are actually coming from the fact that the policies are not actually inclusive of the poor and the rural communities, and also of the smallholder farmers. And we've got also different interests. It's a complex situation. We've got different interests in terms of the different stakeholders that are existing. We've got lack of knowledge of the bioenergy industry itself among the poor. And then we also have a lack of skills, a lack of technology as well that is existing in that sector which we actually have an interest. And as the University of South Africa, we looked at the South African sugar industry, particularly focusing on the small-scale farmers, and we saw that we have got about 20,200 registered small-scale sugarcane growers, and these are producing around 2.1 million tons of sugarcane per season, and translating to around 0.63 million tons of bagasse and 0.11 million tons of sugarcane trash. So for us, this is a sector which has got a potential because it is producing the biomass that we actually require for them to participate in the bioenergy industry in the country. However, you will see that 90% of the sugarcane in the country is actually being harvested through burning. And we are losing a lot of value and we are losing a lot of potential in that area. So the remaining 10%, which is being harvested mechanically, is actually done by the commercial farmers. Those who have got resources and who have got access to finance, and then they are able to afford. And they also have got the knowledge. They have also invested in small bioenergy plants for their farms, and they are converting, they are using the biomass and converting it into energy, which they are using within their farms. So our interest then is to say, where are the opportunities in as far as the small-scale sugarcane sector in South Africa is concerned? And we're looking at the just energy transition that the country has developed through the pressure that came through the COP26 and the promises that were made there by the European partners in as far as money that is going to come to the South African government if it is going to move, for it to assist it to move towards cleaner technologies and use less of fossil fuel or coal. Then we have the South African sugar value chain master plan that was done last year. This one is actually recognizing, for the first time in the country, it's actually recognizing these second generation byproducts of sugarcane production and the potential that can actually be derived from using those for bioenergy. And we see that as a potential and something that needs to be, which we can actually take advantage of. And then we have, as an industry, what has happened over the past decade is that the number of small-scale sugarcane growers is actually reduced in South Africa because of low performance and lead to low income or returns in as far as their production is concerned. Yeah, it's a complex, very complex situation. It looks like it's a very profitable for commercial farmers, but for small-scale farmers, the industry has actually been taxing them. Then we've got, so we are actually looking at sugarcane biomass, but just focusing at that biomass that we think the small-scale sugarcane farmers can actually benefit from, in as far as development pathways for them to be involved in bioenergy value chains in the country. And we believe that production and management of sugarcane trash and development of sugarcane trash value chains are therefore critical. So we have a rural bioenergy program that we are implementing, and we are trying to gain deeper understanding of the bioenergy potential and the structure of the key sectors and role players, policy frameworks and policy and opportunities for the for bioenergy production. And we are using primary data to generate quantitative evidence on environmental implications and harvesting practices and demonstrate potential. We know that for us to convince the government and the policymakers, we need to generate that evidence. And we held consultations with farmers and traditional authorities and key ministries. And we are in the process of benchmarking some of the activities that we are doing. We have already benchmarked with Uganda because they are a little bit advanced around small-scale bioenergy production. And we are in the process of coming to Brazil with our farmers and our government ministries so that at least we can learn from what you guys have been doing. This is some of the consultations that we're holding around. And when you look at the structure, in as far as this slide is concerned, just to show you that what is critical is that 6 sugar cane milling companies actually control the whole sugar industry in South Africa. We are looking at our 12 milling companies that are owned by 6 sugar milling companies. And 2 regions in the country are important in as far as sugarcane production is concerned, KwaZulu-Natal and Mpumalanga. And what is important, if you've been reading the news, Tonga Hollet in the country and Glen Hall, which is another milling company, are under business rescue as we are talking right now. They're facing financial challenges, financial distress, and just to highlight the fact that both last year they defaulted in terms of their payment to SASA, which is the South African Sugarcane Association, and this default meant that they could not, it actually reduced the money or the levies that were actually paid to the small-scale farmers. At the end of the day, the small-scale farmers are the ones who actually pay the heavy burden of some of the activities that are happening within the industry. This is just showing our areas of interest in Mpumalanga and KwaZulu-Natal and the different milling companies that are around. Just to highlight that some of the farmers that we're working with are around 250 kilometers away from the nearest milling company. So access to that mill is actually challenged. I wanted to highlight here that it's a complex situation. We have different stakeholders that we are working with and that we are looking at if we want to make any changes. But they also have different varying interests. Some of them is political, and it's very critical that when we are focusing on development pathways, it is important that we consider each of these interests and the different challenges that are presented by the different stakeholders. I'll be very quick to finalize. What is important here is to highlight that we published a paper recently, and which is showing that there is actually potential and there is value in us pursuing this issue of trying to focus on development pathways for small-scale sugarcane industry as far as bioenergy is concerned. Just to highlight that the energy that we believe could actually could be generated, particularly from the 3,100 small-scale farmers that we're talking to, will be enough to irrigate 54,268 hectares of sugarcane. And that is critical for the farmers because that's one of the biggest challenges that they are facing in the country. Possible development pathways. The first pathway that we think and we want to pilot test, we are in the process of bringing everyone on board. We want to pilot test this, a hybrid project that combines biomass gasifiers and solar generation. We think the rationale is really, it has to be around just energy transition and reducing inequalities in as far as access to income and access to markets is concerned, addressing the high cost of electricity or sugarcane irrigation, which is affecting mainly small-scale farmers. And then those are going to be our beneficiaries, our approach. The project, we want it to operate as a business model wholly owned by the community. The components that we need to address around feasibility, land agreements with the state owners, biomass hubs, collection points, and small designing and installation of small hybrid energy plant feed-in agreement with ESCOM. There are a number of issues that need to be addressed for us to follow this pathway. The second pathway that we are really advocating for is the Rural Bioenergy Program, is the recognition of the bioenergy value of the cane delivered by small-scale growers to millers. And this is an aspect, the current cane delivery agreements that they have, they actually give everything to the millers, and the farmers don't have anything, and the pricing of the sugarcane that is delivered is actually based on the sucrose value, and the very little consideration as far as the bioenergy byproducts that come out of the sugar milling process is concerned. Yet, we know that the millers are actually using that bioproducts to produce energy and powering their mills. They're producing feed and so many other byproducts out of it. And there's very little or to no value that is coming to the smallholder farmers as far as that component is concerned. So we are advocating for that piece. We believe that there should be a negotiated settlement between the Farmers Association, the millers, and the South African sugar industry, and government being the convener in as far as this facilitation or discussion is concerned. What will be required for this pathway to come into effect, and for the farmers at least to gain something from the contribution that they are giving to the bioenergy industry in South Africa, is a review of these cane delivery contracts and a review of the sugar pricing system in the country. We know that it's a long way, but we believe it is possible. So what is the way forward? Collaborations for us with international partners is going to be important. We want to learn from what other countries, those who are more advanced, we have brought in the small-scale farmers into the industry. How have they done it? How can we do it? Obviously, considering the context that South Africa is operating in. We believe that we need to have high-level engagement at national level with key stakeholders, starting with the launch. We are going to launch our phase 1 report. We are bringing everyone on board from the climate change commission that sits within the president's office and all the other stakeholders so that we can sit on the table. We are also going to use that opportunity to launch our Bioenergy Association initiative. And then also comprehensive policy framework for biomass supply for different sources. We believe that this is missing. And financial support mechanisms, I think someone has already talked about this. And then the last thing is capacity building on bioenergy at all levels. I think I've overshooted my time. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing some of the complexities and challenges. It's not just so straightforward as sometimes some people feel. But cognizant of the time, we'll skip the question now. We'll take a question at the end because we still have one more speaker left. And we've talked a lot about Americas. We've talked a lot about Sub-Saharan Africa. And now we move on to Asia. And I'm very pleased to invite Monica Merdekawati from the Asian Center for Energy to talk about biofuel development in the ASEAN region.
Yeah. Hello, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunities. And also, I would like to say thank you for the organizer, BBEST, and also IEA Bioenergy, not forgot to mention that thank you for the invitation from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Brazil, and also the Brazil mission to ASEAN that inviting ASEAN Center for Energy, ASEAN Secretariat, and also the Renewable Energy Subsector Network Chairman from the Malaysia, the Ministry of Energy of Malaysia, Petra. So without further ado, I would like to also start with the sharing the background of how ASEAN and Brazil are connected now. So ASEAN, Brazil have institutionalized the sectoral dialogue partnership through the convening of the first ASEAN-Brazil Joint Sectoral Cooperation Committee meeting on the 1st December of 2022, which signified the launch of the ASEAN-Brazil Formal Cooperation Mechanism. And in the following year, in December 2023, practical cooperation areas between ASEAN and Brazil was developed and adopted that covers the energy cooperation, including renewable energy such as biofuel, as well as the energy security and transition. So now we have come to the content of my presentation, which is about the biofuel development in ASEAN. Can I have the slide up? So while waiting the slide to be up, I would like to also mention that it's more on the disclaimer that for my presentation would be the sharing of biofuel development from the point of view of the regional energy cooperation, whereas our main counterpart is from the Ministry of Energy. Like, for example, Indonesia and Thailand, maybe their Ministry of Energy is the leader of the bioenergy implementation, but not like the rest of the ASEAN member states that may have the other ministry, like Ministry of Agriculture, Transport, and Industry to lead such bioenergy development. So may I have the slide up?
Vocês poderiam colocar o slide da Mônica?
Okay, while waiting, so I will start with the introduction of the ASEAN Center for Energy. So ASEAN Center for Energy is actually intergovernmental organization that is facilitating the regional energy cooperation in ASEAN, and we are working with the supervision of the direction of the ASEAN Secretariat on every activities that we are doing. And ASEAN Center for Energy has the aspiration to grow into think tank, knowledge hub, and also catalyst of the more constructive energy cooperation initiatives in the region with different dialogue partners. And our activity is actually governed by what we so-called the policy document. We call it ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, or APAEC. So in APAEC, there is 7 program area that covering the ASEAN power grid, renewable energy, energy efficiency, nuclear, coal, and many others. And because we are talking about bioenergy, I would like to highlight your attention that in regional or in ASEAN, we have what's so-called the regional renewable energy aspiration target to achieve the 23% of the renewable energy share by 2025. So actually this discussion is timely because 2025 is just a year from now. So having the discussion here, it will be very helpful for our region. First of all, to understand what's next after the 23% RE share, evaluating our efforts so far, and what we can improve. Can I have the slide? So actually in the later presentation, I'm gonna show you how the status quo of the regional energy mix in the Southeast Asia, where actually as the status of the renewable energy achievement in our region, unfortunately it's still far from what we targeted. So as of 2022, our renewable energy share is only at 15.6%. So it's almost 10% gap to achieve the target, the 23% target. And upon understanding how we perform so far as a region in achieving the renewable energy share target, turns out our effort is actually quite well in pursuing the decarbonization of the electricity sector, but it's not translated well into the indicator of the renewable energy achievement in the total primary energy supply. So we identify further what's lacking, and turns out our attention has been lacking on the discussion of energy cooperation in the, for example, decarbonizing the transport and industrial sector. So that's the background of why actually from the regional energy cooperation, we just started to really look into the bioenergy conversation, because so far we have been like discussing the ASEAN power grid or the connectivity of the power sector. And so later actually in the, so while waiting for the slide, so we have...
Monica, your slides are not there. So there will, just give us an overview, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. So, so I'm gonna share that actually in the ASEAN, we have diverse renewable energy resources. Like in the electricity sector, we are pretty much depends on the hydropower, and we are working well in expanding it into the solar and also wind, more solar and wind installed capacity, and also geothermal. And for the bioenergy itself, several countries have been leading the efforts in blending more bioenergy into the energy mix through the biofuel or the biomass utilization in the power sector. So the leaders there are 4 countries. They are Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, and Thailand. So for Indonesia, maybe as you may know, Indonesia is one of the leader of the palm oil production, because we have so much palm oil plantation, and then following that is Malaysia, and then for the Philippines and Thailand, the main feedstock sources is sugarcane, and also for Philippines is coconut oil actually, beside the sugarcane. And upon our identification further that amongst the 10 ASEAN member states, we have 6 ASEAN member states that already implemented blending targets. Like for example, Indonesia as of, maybe the most updated, so I have to double check later, but okay, here. This is about ACE. So I have been through this, and this is about our Bible for the energy cooperation, and we will renew it in the 2025. And this is about the energy mix of our region. pretty much oil and gas dominated still, but in the power sector we see like much more renewable energy mix. And the region also have been increasingly focusing on decarbonizing the transport sector. One of it is through EV and also biofuel adoption, and also clean cooking, fuel shift in the clean cooking. And we have also so actually this is based on the ASEAN Energy Outlook 8th edition that we published in last month in the ASEAN Ministers of Energy meeting under the chairmanship of the Lao PDR. Whereas this is the projection, and we have the what's so-called the carbon neutrality scenario projection, where we foresee how SAF, hydrogen, and hydrogen in industry and transport might be a low-hanging avenue for the region to decarbonize the energy sector. So this is the overview of the renewable energy status achievement. And this is what I'm talking about. So we have diverse renewable energy resources, and also on the left, the right side, the green table is like how actually ASEAN member states aiming for the renewable energy adoption, how they aim for the renewable energy target in different energy sector like power, transport, and also mostly power, transport, and electricity and heat. And this is the identification of the how renewable energy resources availability in each countries. And this is the one I'm talking about. This is the 4 leader, not to mention actually the rest of the 6 ASEAN member states actually have abundance of the feedstock, because like our region is basically agricultural based economy, but not yet into like significant progression into the adoption of the biofuel. One of it may be just a matter of knowledge, the need to build the capacity and understand and awareness that we can have the fuel from from the crops and the waste of the crops. And this is the mapping on how actually the ASEAN member states aiming for the renewable energy target. And specific into the bioenergy, we see the column in the transport sector, how they specifically aim for EV or bioenergy, so on and so forth. And and this is, I was explaining about the blending mandates of the 6 ASEAN countries. So like Indonesia, E20 by 2025, and then E50, and also B30. B is biodiesel, B30, B40. Low PDR also have blending mandates. Malaysia E10, and then B20. Philippines E10, E20 by 2040, B5, B10. And Thailand, more ambitious on the ethanol side because of the sugar, the abundance of the sugar cane. And also B7, B10, B20. And Vietnam with the like the number presented here. And on the blue table is to show that how we see different sector affecting more effectively to the achievement of the renewable energy share. And we see the low-hanging avenue to decarbonize actually the transport sector, residential and industry, which through the bioenergy. And so this is maybe just the conclusion of our presentation. Recalling our yesterday discussion with Professor Glaucia and also Ma'am Lais, that actually Southeast Asia and Brazil have similarities. We are developing countries, we have diverse resources, and we have the same understanding of how to prioritize the local development over the jargon. Like, for example, maybe the example is instead of EV versus biofuel, so we are considering the same approach like Brazil, like EV and biofuel, why not, right? So I will conclude my presentation that hopefully after this conference, ASEAN and Brazil can have more activities, many to come on the prioritization of data collection and research, collaboration and knowledge sharing for more enhanced capacity on the understanding of the sustainable biofuel production. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Perfect. Thank you so much. First of all, for improvising. I mean, I can understand it's a very big challenge to do that, but also for sharing the development from so many countries. There's a lot of powerhouses like Indonesia and Malaysia, but there's also new ones upcoming. So it's very good to see the development there. Cognizant of the time that we have, we're going to skip the questions right now, and I give the opportunity to the host, Professor Glaucia, to sort of summarize and give your concluding statements on the session.
Thank you very much, Bharadwaj, and all colleagues here. It's I think meeting and trying to talk through our common challenges and problems is first step, but we need to move on and actually engage in productive cooperation, as we see in many levels that is needed. When we decided to study the emerging markets, we see an amazing potential. It's obvious that it's important for this region, for the Global South, to develop and transition through this decarbonization process in a fair way. And many of the challenges perhaps we solve. You have a lot of knowledge on the oil crops. We have much knowledge on the sugar crops and irrigation, for instance, you mentioned. We are now decreasing yields in Brazil because of increased drought. So like a couple of years ago, we did an analysis. We were down 5% in yield. This year, the projection is 9% decrease in yield. We are developing crop that is more tolerant to drought. There's a lot that we can exchange in managing practices, knowledge, and establish, I think, formal cooperation to have students exchange, and perhaps they can come up with the best solution. So I just want to announce that we do intend to continue studying the emerging markets, and we will, of course, need to continue updating our reports on this, and I'm looking forward to collaborating with you in the future. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And before we conclude, a big round of applause to all the speakers for sharing their perspectives. Thank you all for staying back. I'm sure you're all hungry, and thanks for sharing your questions and so on. And now we break for lunch. Thank you.